was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whips on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. Honorable members, I've been informed that the President will be answering questions through the virtual platform. The first question has been asked by the Honorable G.P. Maswale. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank is set out in Section 224 of our Constitution, which states that the primary objective of the South African Reserve Bank is to protect the value of the currency of South Africa in the interest of balanced and sustainable economic growth in the Republic. South Africa faces a structural growth and unemployment problem, which cannot simply be addressed by a mere accommodative monetary policy stance. We need to focus on the structural factors constraining our economy. That is why, as part of our efforts to accelerate growth and employment creation, we are committed to macroeconomic stability, the rapid implementation of the reforms that we have undertaken, and a capable state that provides the necessary public goods and services to its citizens. Price stability supports economic growth, as low and stable inflation creates certainty about future prices, which helps to facilitate investment and also to ensure that indeed our growth trajectory is a stable one. Low and stable inflation makes South Africa's exports competitive relative to trade partners that we trade with. By contrast, higher inflation harms economic growth and stifles economic employment creation rather. Higher inflation also erodes the purchasing power and the living standards of everyone, especially the poor in our country. As inflation rises, the cost of living goes up. Most items cost more and people are not able to afford many of the items they usually buy. While the Reserve Bank should, without sacrificing price stability, take into account broader objectives such as employment creation and economic growth. There is therefore currently no intention to review the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank. In terms of our constitution, the South African Reserve Bank, in pursuit of its primary object, must perform its functions independently without fear, favor or prejudice, but there must be regular consultation between the bank and the cabinet minister, in this case the finance minister, responsible for national financial matters. In terms of the South African Reserve Bank Act, the bank must and does publish a monthly statement of its assets and liabilities and an annual report and present those to Parliament. The bank is therefore accountable to Parliament. The governor of the bank holds regular discussions with the Minister of Finance and from time to time appears before the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee and select committees on finance. So the accountability of the bank is in place. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable G.P. Maswale.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable President, for a comprehensive response. However, Mr. President, may I bring to your attention that, and I'm sure you are aware of this, the Minister of Finance yesterday, in his medium-term budget policy statement, made a very sobering submission about our GDP growth, which he said has been adjusted downwards to 0.8% this year, projected to average around 1.4% over the medium term. In his words, if I may quote, he says, open quote, "These growth rates are not sufficient to achieve our desired levels of development," close quote. Mr. President, I'm sure you would agree that in search for solutions to these difficult challenges of the day, like the unacceptably high levels of unemployment and poverty, certainly nothing could be considered as sacrosanct or cast in stone. Mr. President, it would appear that all these policy instruments have to be used interactively, and in this instance, also monetary policy has a role to play. Is it not time, Honorable President, that we look more into this question of a more accommodative monetary policy stance that goes beyond just price stability, as you have indicated, to take care of other important
Your time
variables?
is up, Honorable
Thank you
Member.
very much.
Thank you. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Indeed, I am fully aware of the medium-term policy budget statement that was made by the Minister yesterday in the National Assembly, and also his comments and statement regarding our growth prospects. And as I said earlier, Section 224 of our Constitution sets out the clear objectives or objects of the central bank. And if one looks at that section carefully, you will find that whilst it addresses the issue of the value of our currency, it has to be looked at in broader context. The context of the bank also using the various policy instruments that it has to foster economic growth. So therefore, we need to use, as I think you correctly said, all the instruments at our disposal. The macroeconomic policies of our country need to be used at our disposal, both fiscal and monetary, to foster growth. Now, the focus on the value of our currency is not a matter that needs to be looked only in isolation. It needs to be looked at as part of the whole instruments, all the instruments that we have to promote growth, to foster job creation, and to have a macroeconomic environment that is stable, that encourages investment as well. And if we use this type of approach, which is multidisciplinary, we should be able to continue ensuring that growth does indeed get encouraged, get properly entrenched in our economy. We have faced difficult challenges, particularly after the 2008 financial global crisis. The growth levels in our economy have not lived up to all our expectations. And we continue, much as we are growing, we continue to grow at anemic levels. There are certain things we have to do, which I also focused on in my main reply. The various reforms that we have to embark upon and complete so that we can create a conducive climate for investments to take place in our country. Now, all the efforts that are being made are aimed towards ensuring that we do get to a level where our economic growth is around 5% and more, because then we will be able to create more jobs on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I'm sure you're aware that if the South African Reserve Bank loses its independence, as suggested by my right honourable friend, and starts to print money to prop up your failing government, it would drive hyperinflation through the roof, devalues people's incomes, and cause the type of collapse that we've seen in Zimbabwe and Venezuela, plunging more of our people into dire poverty. It should be a matter of grave concern for you, however, Mr. President, that the Reserve Bank has already been compromised and its independence already stained in what was clearly an unfair exoneration of yourself in the Phala Phala matter. Has your exoneration on the Phala Phala matter not now opened up a loophole for money launderers who can now stuff millions of dollars and pounds into couches as long as they never complete their transactions? And doesn't this undermine the efforts of your government to get us off the grey list? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The independence of the Reserve Bank is set out in our Constitution, and the Reserve Bank has always acted independently, without favor, without prejudice, and it is one of those central banks that are highly respected in the world. And we need to continue to uphold the independence of the central bank. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you. The third supplementary question. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable E.M. Buthelezi.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Buthelezi is having some challenges with connectivity, and I will take the question on his behalf. Mr. President, in the year 2000, South Africa became the 13th country to adopt an inflation-targeting monetary policy framework, targeting an inflation band of between 3% and 6% for consumer inflation. Given that, to a large extent, Honorable President, the inflation figures in our country are as a result of exogenous factors, the price of Brent crude oil, the wars outside of our country, and so on and so forth. Do you think that the policy of using inflation targeting to set monetary policy is a wise one moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, you are absolutely correct that we have opted for a policy approach that sets parameters or targets our inflation rate between 3% and 6%. It should be known that we are not the only country in the world that has an inflation targeting policy approach. This has served us well in the past, and I believe that it continues to serve us well. And the central bank focuses on ensuring that our inflation rate is within that target range. And when the governor and the minister get together to discuss the various matters, this is one of the issues that they also focus their attention on. So I have seen no reason to believe that there is any need for deviation, because the Reserve Bank continues to ensure that our inflation, by utilizing various instruments, including our interest rate regime, which is an instrument which the central bank uses from time to time. And right now, many people are feeling the pinch, but I am confident that as inflation rates come down in the rest of the world and our currency gets stronger, we should be able to see lower interest rates coming down, therefore proving the efficacy of continuing to use this inflation rate targeting. So until otherwise demonstrated, I think this continues to be a good policy approach. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable W.M. Dring.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the primary function of the South African Reserve Bank in terms of Section 224 of the Constitution is to protect the value of the rand in the interest of a balanced and sustainable economic growth in the Republic, where the instrument used to control the economy is inflation targeting through its monetary policy. Now, there are those who would argue that inflation targeting has become a blunt tool, which largely impacts the poor and the middle class, particularly when the repo rate is increased. Within the South African context, low inflation correlates to low economic growth. Now, Mr. President, with countries such as Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and Zambia having higher inflation targets with higher growth rates, would you agree, Mr. President, that the Reserve Bank should also have economic growth, employment, and investment targets together with an inflation target? If yes, when would this be implemented? If not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
The approach that the central bank has used, which is also supported widely in our country, is that of curbing inflation. Because a higher rate of inflation, in the end, has a negative impact on the poor, because the value of their currency, the value of the money they have, also goes down and therefore impoverishes them even more. And that is why the drafters of our Constitution felt that we need to focus attention on the value of our currency. And indeed, many other central banks around the world also focus on the value of their currency, because the value of the currency is important in the hands, it's an important instrument in the hands of ordinary people, particularly the poor. The higher the inflation rate, the lesser they are able to purchase in the form of goods and services with their currency. So in the end, economic policy is the whole process and act of balancing. You've got to balance a number of things, and in this regard, we have focused on the value of the currency so that that value of the currency is able to promote, yes, economic growth. When inflation is at the level where it is now, and interest rates are high indeed, the balance goes out of kilter because it prevents investors from investing in our economy. And we hope and trust that this is a momentary process and this will pass and we will see higher levels of growth and a lower inflation and therefore lower interest rates as we proceed forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. Question number 20 has been asked by the Honorable N. Singh. The Honorable the President.
Since taking office, I have established 2 commissions of inquiry in terms of Section 84(2)(f) of our Constitution. The first of these was the Commission of Inquiry into Tax Administration and Governance by the South African Revenue Service, which was established on the 23rd of May 2018. The second was the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of impropriety regarding the Public Investment Corporation, the PIC, which was established on the 17th of October 2018. In respect of the second part of the question, in 2013, former President Jacob Zuma appointed a commission of inquiry into the remuneration and conditions of service in the public services and public entities. The commission was called the Presidential Remuneration Review Commission and was headed by retired Chief Justice Mobo and retired Deputy President of the Supreme Court, Justice Mtiani. The commission completed its work and its report was approved by Cabinet in February of 2021. The report and its recommendations were referred to the Department of Public Service and Administration to inform its work with respect to matters of remuneration standards. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you very much, Honorable President. Thank you for the answer. From what I researched, I note that there were 4 commissions that were appointed during your time: the Zondo Commission, the Nugent Commission, the Mpati Commission, and the Mokoro Inquiry, dealing with different matters. But it is to the second part of the question that I would like to ask you a question, Honorable President, and your advice. It is to the commission that was set by Honorable President, former President Zuma, with regard to the remuneration and public service. And to this end, I want to ask specifically about the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers that was appointed under your watch, Honorable President. Now, from what I know in my experience here in Parliament, this commission is really dragging its feet in coming up with tangible proposals to Parliament on the remuneration of office bearers. And next year in the 7th Parliament, we're going to have a new cohort of members of Parliament coming into Parliament. And surely they would like to know what the terms and conditions of the service would be, what salaries they would get, what tools of trade they would get, etc. Now, this commission that we have currently, Honorable President, reminds me of the Springboks. They go into a scrum and then the pack collapses. They go into another scrum and the pack collapses. Because from my research, they've been reviewing and reviewing all the way back for about 10 years, the issue of remuneration of public office bearers. And I want to know, Honorable President, if you will put pressure on this commission to come up with tangible solutions so that members of parliament and other public office bearers will know exactly what they are in for in the 7th Parliament. And to this end, Mr. President, let me emphasize that we are not saying give us an increase. We understand the financial position that the country is in, but we'd really like to know what our terms and conditions and packages would be. So this commission needs to be given the red card. First a yellow card by you, Mr. President, and then the red card. Sin bin and then the red card. And my question, Mr. President, is how will you deal with this matter and the lethargy by the commission? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To my recollection, and indeed the reality, is that the State Capture Commission was not appointed by myself, it was appointed by my predecessor. And to my recollection as well, the other commission you referred to was also appointed in that way. So what I did indicate is that those two commissions which were appointed in 2018 were the ones that I appointed. But be that as it may, the issue of this commission, the Independent Commission for Remuneration of Public Office Bearers, I hear the frustration that you are articulating. It is well understood, and their work is overdue. I am informed that the process of preparing the report is underway and that the submission of the recommendation to the President and its publication will happen before the end of the year, or the financial year, I should add. So the Commission has indicated that it is finalizing their report for all public office bearers. You would like me to put pressure on them. As you well know, these types of commissions are independent, and we need to retain that level of independence and non-interference, because that is the type of rule of law environment and ecosystem that we have. However, I have been informed that their report should be forthcoming shortly. And I agree with you that as we go into the 7th administration, as new members of parliament are going to be inaugurated or appointed, it is important that public office bearers should know what terms and conditions are going to govern their tenure as public representatives. So this work is underway, and I'm sure that we should be able to receive the report shortly. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable SGN Mbata.
Honorable Speaker, the President, I have one question for you. What were the lessons learned from establishing these two commissions, and how was it applied? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, we have learned many lessons from the establishment of the two commissions that I referred to, that I appointed. They have tabled their reports, and those reports are being analyzed and have been analyzed and various proposals and recommendations that were made by those two commissions are being turned either into regulations, into legislation, and those will, as we move on, be put forward to Parliament for legislation, because they have come up with really important recommendations as they have looked at the misdemeanors and lack of adherence to governance processes in the work that they performed. The Nugent Commission did precisely that in relation to SARS, as well as the Mbati Commission in relation to the Public Investment Corporation. So we are making considerable progress with regard to the implementation of the recommendations that they put forward. So valuable and important lessons have been learned, and we hope and trust and believe that SARS and indeed the PIC will be much better organizations once all their recommendations have been implemented. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ahead of next year's election, I'll be happy to take you through the package of the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. President, what is the point of these commissions if we don't implement the findings of them? And I quote from you recently where you said that those who are involved in corruption, who are even thinking about engaging in criminal conduct, must know that all the instruments of the state will be used to bring them to book. There will be no place for corrupt people, for criminal networks, and for the perpetrators of state capture to hide, unquote. The Zondo report found against Depio Peters, Zizi Kodwa, Kumbudzo Nchivene, Gwede Mantashe, and Tabang Maketla for their parts in state capture. Yet these people still sit around your cabinet table. How can you honestly say there's nowhere for these people to hide when they're hiding in plain sight around your cabinet table? Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have said on a number of occasions that the recommendations that were put forward by the State Capture Commission are being processed, and I did address Parliament to give the response of the government to those recommendations. And a considerable amount of progress is being made in implementing the various recommendations that were put forward. And at the same time, I did say that our law enforcement agencies, in their various iterations, particularly the prosecutorial agencies, are in the process of processing whatever actions that can and will be taken against anyone who is implicated in wrongdoing. Now, we've worked on a simple and straightforward principle that we would like the recommendations to be implemented. And implementation should also, as I said, even in my recent statement, result in those that have done any wrong or been involved in wrongdoing to be followed up through prosecution. And once charges are preferred against anyone, we are then able to follow through. Now, I have said on a number of occasions that many charges have been preferred against a number of people who've been involved in the whole process of state capture. Many cases are appearing before our courts, and there's also been the process of following up on their assets through the assets forfeiture structure that we've got. So all that is going ahead. And of course, in the end, we pay little attention to the progress that is being made with regard to the reclaiming of ill-gotten monies that are now coming back to the state, as well as those people who are now in courts, have been charged, and processes are underway. Progress is being made. And of course, progress in relation to all these matters does, yes, tend to take its time, as it does in many other environments. But progress is being made because we will ensure that justice is in fact implemented, and we will ensure that criminality is followed up. So be rest assured that as we proceed, processes of following up on those who have committed any form of wrongdoing will continue. That is the assurance that I can give, and that is the determination of our law enforcement agencies, who act independently without any fear or favor or prejudice. And that for me is an important principle. And I've often said that when we give them the freedom, the resources to act, I've often found that they do act indeed on an independent, non-prejudice, no fear type of basis. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. I've been informed that the request for the last supplementary question was not received. We then proceed to the next question, and that is question number 21. It has been asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald. The Honorable...
My apologies, Honorable Speaker. May I proceed?
Yes, you may proceed, Honorable President.
Thank you. My respect to you. Honorable Speaker, violence against women and children is a deeply entrenched problem in our country, and this continues despite clear political commitment and several measures taken to combat it. Our country has high levels of socioeconomic inequality, which can lead to increased levels of violence, including gender-based violence. Cultural norms, patriarchal values, and toxic masculinity continues to be perpetrated, and they perpetuate gender inequality and contribute to violence against women. Through the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which was really crafted by the women of our country and presented at the summit, the first gender-based summit that I convened. We have embarked on several strategies to end violence against women. Critical among these is the work underway to improve the response of the criminal justice system to gender-based violence, with a focus on the more effective law enforcement, better training for our police officers, and the streamlined legal processes that we have put in place and continue to put in place. The laws that we have enacted have led to increased sentences for offenders. They've also led to tighter bail and parole conditions and provided greater protection for women at risk of domestic violence. Through specialized units like the NPA Sexual Offenses and Community Affairs Unit, the state is securing more convictions and longer sentences for perpetrators of violence against women and children. The conviction rate for matters emanating from our Tutuzela care centers, for example, currently stand at 76.5%, up from 60% in 2010. Various campaigns and initiatives seek to raise awareness about gender-based violence and promote gender equality. These efforts aim to challenge traditional norms and educate the public about the consequences of such violence. Ending gender-based violence requires a sustained, multi-pronged approach that should involve all key role players in our country, and that should address the underlying structural issues in our society and changes in cultural norms and attitude. It is a long-term challenge that requires the commitment of not just the political leaders, but society as a whole. In this regard, we should commend the National Assembly for passing the National Council of Provinces for passing the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill earlier. This is a vital piece of legislation that will strengthen our national response to the scourge. Now, the South African Police is implementing the Gender-Based Violence and Sexual Offences Action Plan, and we commend them for this. A key focus of the action plan is active partnerships and civil society organizations, including faith-based organizations and traditional authorities that help to strengthen positive norms and values in communities. Now, the South African Police Service has also undertaken the Children's Program, which aims to identify and ensure sustainable protection of children at risk of crime. The program supports the establishment of child committees at police stations in areas where there is a high prevalence of crime against children or crimes that are committed by children as well. These committees identify children that are at risk of crime, and they indicate the factors that place them at risk and ensure the appropriate officials address the factors placing them at risk. Now, the police also conduct awareness-raising programs addressing any emerging trends and tendencies that make children particularly vulnerable to become victims of crime. And the police have a partnership with the Department of Basic Education for the implementation of the school safety program. This includes conducting searches at schools for drugs, for weapons that could be used to harm members of the school community. Now, the school liaison officer can also address children on the risks and emerging trends that make children vulnerable to crime and provide information on how to build resilience against becoming child or crime offenders or victims. Now, all these initiatives are aimed at addressing this problem of gender-based violence against the women of our country and the children. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald.
Geachte Speaker, deur u to the Honorable President. Honorable President, the Freedom Front Plus agrees and we support all these measures that you have referred to. And it is the necessary steps, but surely there must be a way to measure the success of all these steps, the strengthening of legislation. And my follow-up question to you is, how do you, as president, measure the success of all these steps? And the reason I'm asking it, surely a very strong indication is the murder rate. And over the last 5 years, the murder rate on women increased with 23.5%. In the previous financial year, 3,422 women were killed and 1,056 children, an increase of 7.2% over 5 years. And these are the statistics of the police. Now, my worry is, I've asked a question to the Honourable Minister about the murder rate over the last 10 years on murders in South Africa, and I wanted to know on the basis of gender and also on race and also on the how old the people are. And this is the answer I received. Yes, I get the whole number. It says the reclassification of the statistics above in terms of additional attributes such as the victim's age group, race, and gender requires a thorough docket analysis as the information is not always accurately captured and not compulsory.
Thank
Now,
you,
Honourable
Honourable
President,
Member.
with
Your
great
time is
respect,
up.
that means the figures are not right. Therefore, my follow-up question, what measures do you take to ensure success? Thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable, the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I'd like to thank Honourable Groenewald for, in the main, appreciating the various initiatives that I alluded to earlier, because those initiatives are aimed precisely at addressing the issue that he raises in his question about how do we measure success. And I guess, Honourable Groenewald, success indeed is an objective that we need to focus on. We need to be able to measure precisely whether we are moving forward or not. Now, I spend quite a lot of time, not only with the minister, but also with the Commissioner of Police, discussing precisely these matters, particularly from an implementation point of view. Now, with the other measures that we have introduced, like increasing the number of police, the number of police who should be on the beat, who should be on the ground, I am hopeful that we are going to start seeing a great deal of progress, which will also contribute to the success that we will have. Now, yes, because we are such a big country of 62 million people, and with a police force that has been going down compared to the population, and the ratio, as you have often said, is not well balanced. It is also a challenge to get all the proper statistics. We are working to improve even the measuring, because it is something that I believe is important, that we should have proper records, proper statistics, so as to be able to see the progress that we are making. We are one of those countries that seeks to have proper records on a number of areas that affect our lives as South Africans, and it is also in the incidence of criminality that I would also like to see more precise numbers and measures coming forward, so that we can be able to accurately see that we are making progress. But be rest assured, this problem of criminality, particularly the crimes that are committed against women and children, is a matter that is top of mind, that continues to exercise myself and indeed the Minister and the Commissioner of Police and his colleagues, and we will make sure that we get on top of it. And we have been throwing resources or making resources available. And we are going to be making more resources available, as you will have heard from the Minister of Finance, to make sure that we strengthen policing in our country and rid our country of criminality, but more especially criminality also against women and children. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N.P. Peacock.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, the increase in the reported contact crime against women and children are indeed a cause for grave concern. Do you, President, believe that this might point towards increasing levels of trust in the ability of police service to assist victims of gender-based violence and femicide? I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Increasing the trust levels between the police and members of our community is something that we are focusing our attention on. And it is in the issue of criminality, particularly crimes that are committed against women and children, where the real test is. And it is in this area where we are doing quite a lot of work, particularly in regard to the initiatives that I spoke to. The training of police has increased enormously to ensure that when our police handle cases of crimes committed against women and children, they do so sensitively, they do so in a way that will increase the level of trust between the victims of crime as well as the communities at large. Now, this training and the various other initiatives, and also putting in place more and more Tutuzela centers, is really contributing towards ensuring that that level of trust is increased. The other initiative that we have embarked upon, which has shown great progress and greater promise, is the DNA testing facility. I went to the biggest DNA testing facility we have in the Eastern Cape, in Gqeberha, and saw how we have revamped it and how we've been able to decrease the backlog of thousands and thousands of samples. And I went there with a number of women-led organizations, and they testified to the fact that they can see progress. Now, that in itself increases the level of confidence that the women of our country should have on an increasing basis in the approach and the manner in which the police handle gender-based violence cases against women and children. So we will continue to work to ensure that that trust and that confidence does increase. I know we are starting from a low base, but the initiatives that we've embarked upon now is precisely what the women of our country asked for. And we've joined them and we're supporting them with the implementation of these various initiatives. And for instance, from a legislative point of view, I'm hoping and trusting that the women of our country and those key role players will see that we are seeking to make progress. But I should also say much more still needs to be done. And it is precisely this that we will focus more attention on. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Allow me to recognize our guest from the Rif Republic in the audience. Mr. President, I like what you're saying. Multi-pronged approach. Absolutely correct. I notice all the emphasis appears to be on the Minister of Police and the Department of Police and SABC as a whole. They're not creating the problem. When can we implement this multi-pronged approach to ensure that all relevant departments come together? Now, let me give you an example very quickly, Mr. President. 91,000 children were born from children in this country last year. Taverns are open 24 hours, and the Minister of Police and the entire SABC have been raising this again and again. Nothing is happening. Okay? 78%, Honorable Speaker, in some of the communities of fathers are not in the lives of the children. They are never seen or heard. No maintenance is being paid. The socio-economic conditions under which they live is giving rise to these high levels of gender-based violence. So I think we need the holistic approach, Mr. President. I like what you're saying. Can we have an indaba or whatever we call it, so that we come together and address the root causes of gender-based violence? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, Honorable Sheikh. Tackling violence against women and children, as I said, requires a multi-pronged approach, but also all of society. This cannot be solved by the police alone. And the police often come as an after effect when the crime has already been committed, when a woman has been raped or killed, and usually it happens when people who are related to each other, know each other, are involved. It requires all of society. It requires men in our country to ensure that they take up the responsibility they should. And you're touching on a very important point, the absence of men in the lives of their children. As you correctly say, some 70% or more of the children grow up with their fathers not present in their lives. And this is just a recipe for a number of social problems that will definitely arise. And we therefore need to focus also on how all of society gets involved in this process and not just be pointing fingers at the police. We need to go to the root cause of these problems and these challenges. And what we have found also working is focusing on the role of men in the whole process of gender-based violence. And I've heard of a university in our country where there was widespread abuse of women or young women in the university, where they started calling men's dialogues. And they said, as the men started discussing what terrible crimes are being committed against women, they found that the conversations and the dialogues led to lesser and lesser incidents of gender-based violence. And it is when men do this that we can make progress. Minister of Basic Education or Department of Basic Education is propagating this type of approach and getting young boys at schools to have conversations about gender-based violence. And I attended one in Soweto and was pleasantly pleased, I should say, when young boys stood up and spoke against gender-based violence. Later this month, I will be convening men's dialogue across our continent, where a number of heads of state will also participate. It will be the third such dialogue that will be held on our continent, with great participation at head of state level, where we will be dealing with the issues of masculinity and making sure that we spread the word and the message about the role that men have to play in ridding our country and indeed our continent, because gender-based violence is also rife in a number of countries on our continent, and that is why I will be convening such a dialogue, at which will attend quite a number of people from across the continent. It is when we do this, and I'd like to encourage all of us as leaders to focus on ensuring that we spread the word, because this is all of society responsibility. And when we do embark on initiatives like this, it's already becoming proven that when we have such conversations, such dialogue, we are able to see gender-based violence tapering down. Of course, we've got to do it in a much bigger way to be able to see meaningful change. But it is a task that we should all take upon our shoulders. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, despite the jargon, the platitudes, and the acronyms, the reality is, as the statistics show, we are losing this battle. Violence against women and children is going up. It's not coming down. Sipakazi Boy was brutally murdered 2 years ago. She was beaten to death, she was dismembered, she was burnt, and her body was dumped in a wheelie bin. There's been no justice for Sipakazi, and there's been no justice for thousands of women and children like her who are similarly brutalized on your watch. And part of the reason for this is the massive drop in the number of detectives. We've lost 8,000 detectives since you became president. Now, detective services are a critical component in ensuring quality investigations and prosecutions. And like you, I was also in Gqeberha, where I visited the Chatty police station, who have got a critical shortage of detectives. How can you justify budget cuts to detectives when you're increasing the budget for VIP protection services for yourself and your cabinet?
I thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to regard what Honorable Leader of the Opposition said as a suggestion, where he's suggesting that we've got to increase the number of detectives, and as we increase the number of police officers and increasing them by the thousands, I would like to insert a positive message which he did not articulate. I would have liked him to hear him say, Mr. President, make sure that those police officers that we are training and bringing into the police service, some of them are trained as good detectives, because that's precisely what we are focusing attention on. So I'd like to hear some really good suggestions from him. So I'm reading that as a good suggestion. And Honorable Speaker, I think it is best to leave it there rather than to listen to his diatribe and his moaning, because we're dealing here with a very serious matter, a serious matter that requires all of society involvement, a serious matter that requires that we should come forward with positive suggestions. The level of investigations has increased tremendously, and success rate, as I said, with a number of cases that have to deal with crimes committed against women and children. There is forward movement. And of course, because of the incident, it does feel and look like we may not be making progress. But what we should all be saying is that we need to move quicker, more with determination, including making sure that investigations do lead to great success, and we have detectives that are going to be able to investigate all these acts of criminality so that we leave no one behind. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. As I proceed to question number 22, I wish to congratulate you on behalf of all members of Parliament for the intended conference which you will be holding continentally, which relates to issues of gender violence. Question number 22 has been asked by the Honorable Q.R. Gyanki. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Census 2022 results show substantial shifts in important indicators such as access to education, housing, electricity, water, and sanitation facilities. The results have significant implications for policy and planning in our country. The Census 2022 data will be used in the work that is being coordinated by the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation on the 30-year review of progress since the advent of democracy, and for the development of the medium-term National Development Plan for 2024 to 2029. The census shows that South Africa continues to have relatively high levels of population growth and urbanization. The population increased by 20% from 2011 to 2022, an increase of 10.3 million people. Gauteng, as South Africa's most populous and most urbanized province, saw an increase in population to 15.1 million people, more than double that of the Western Cape at 7.4 million. From a policy and planning perspective, this points to the need to more deliberately and consistently plan for urbanization to ensure adequate infrastructure, service delivery, and economic opportunities. While increasing efforts to advance rural development, government will also focus more on leveraging the role of cities as engines and centers of growth and shared prosperity. The census further demonstrated that South Africa's population remains young, with a median age of 28 years. Just over 61% of our population is under 35 years old. Our country, therefore, needs to continue with efforts to improve early childhood development, education outcomes, and post-school education and training. The figures further showed significant improvements in education levels in 2022 compared to 1996. For example, the percentage of people aged 20 years and older who completed secondary education more than doubled from 16% in 1996 to 38% in 2022. The number of households almost doubled between 1996 to 2022, pointing to significant pressure on housing as well as services that need to be provided. Significantly, there was a huge increase in the percentage of households that reside in formal dwellings from 65% in 2011 to 89% in 2022. There has been a massive increase in access to basic services, over the last 3 decades. For example, there was an increase in access to electricity for lighting from 58% in, say, 1995, or 1996 rather, to 2022, to 95%. Now, Census 2022 clearly demonstrates the effectiveness of economic and social policies that have been pursued by successive democratic administrations. The results of the census show that as we continue to work for universal access to basic services such as housing, health, and education, we need to pursue stable and prudent macroeconomic policies that have a strong developmental perspective that will enable us to even make greater progress on all these counters. For we have set a fairly good foundation. What we now need to do is to make universal more universal, but we also need to increase, or improve rather, the quality of the services that are provided to our people. And this is a commitment that we have. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Kubutile Janji from the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable President, for that comprehensive response. Your response demonstrates that we remain a country that is progressing against all odds. I hope you share my enthusiasm, Honorable President, that the Census 22 results represent a commendable achievement by Stats SA against both objective and subjective challenges, which include your COVID-19 environment, the July 2021 unrest affecting 2 of our most populous provinces, KZN and Gauteng, devastating floods, not to mention man-made problems in the Western Cape that delayed even this census. We know of countries that could not do it. We know of countries that had to stop midstream, but Mzansi did it, and here it is. Can the President share with this House and the nation how the Census 2022 results will be tailor-made for planning and implementation in all our DDMs, provinces, including critical institutions, as well as packaging it for popular consumption by ordinary communities? I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The 2022 census results are much more than just putting out statistics. They give us a toolkit, a toolbox that we can utilize to ensure that we make progress on a number of areas that affect our people's lives. These results are going to play a key role in our planning. They are going to demonstrate to us where we need to make progress. Also, particularly as we implement the district development plan or model, because through the DDM, as we call it, we're then going to be able to develop a clear one plan. Yes, for our country, for provinces, for our districts, and finally, for the areas where our people live in the communities through the municipalities. So census results are hugely important, and they are not just a tick box type of exercise. They are a toolbox and tools that are going to enable us to plan more carefully, to be able to lay more emphasis in areas where there are shortcomings, And some of those areas are critical because they impact and affect almost certain provinces in our country, certain districts where we need to lay more emphasis on. So this census is an important one, and you're absolutely correct. We need to applaud Stats SA for having come out with these results against all odds. They had to go through huge challenges. And as they have said themselves, there is a method or methodology that they are going to use to give more perfection to the results that they have come up with. And they need to be applauded, the entire staff and the statistician general, for the excellent work that they did. As you say, other countries were not able to due to COVID and a whole number of other challenges. And in our case, yes, we had enormous challenges by the bucketful. But Stats SA was able to produce the results that are much needed, particularly as we now move to the 30 years of our democracy and we prepare our 30-year review. Our 30-year review would have been almost incredulous if it was not based on real statistics that have come from Stats SA. So as we prepare our 30-year review in a very transparent manner so that all of us as South Africans, we can see what progress we have made and where we have either remained stagnant or gone backward, we will be able to use the information or the data that Stats SA has put on the table much more effectively and more credibly, so that everyone who either has doubts or so can check what we will be putting out as a review against precisely what Stats SA has come up with. And let me end by saying, in the end, there are quite a number of institutions and organizations that come up with one set of statistics or another. And I should say, in the end, there is only one institution that has the credibility and that has the standing of coming up with real statistics, credible statistics, and that is Stats SA. And let me end by saying they do so because they are independent. They do so because they are transparent, and they do so not to please any entity in our country. And that is what makes me proud about the work that many of our institutions do, because they do so without any favor, without any prejudice, and lastly, without any interference from government or anyone. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, no matter how you spin the census data, South Africa is going backwards on every one of the socio-economic indicators. Basic education holds the key to improving people's lives, yet our schooling system is broken. 81% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning. Only 3 out of every 10 grade 6 teachers can read analytically and solve maths problems. We're at the bottom of the world in TIMS, and 7 out of 10 young people have been pushed into the unemployment queue because of this failing system. But instead of fixing the 95% of the schools that are broken, you now want to take control of the 5% of the schools that are working and delivering results. That's why you've introduced the Bella Bill. Everything the ANC has touched, they've broken. Eskom, Denel, Portnet, Transnet, every government department, every entity. Why should the people of South Africa now trust you that you're not going to use the Bella Bill to destroy schools, just like you've destroyed Eskom, just like you've destroyed SAA, just how you've destroyed everything else that your government has touched? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, all I can say is, as I said earlier, Stats SA has come out with census data, and the census data speaks for itself. And however much any one of us can try to spin it, to use Honorable Steenhuisen's language, in the end, Stats SA has the last word. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question. Order. Order. Order, honorable members. Chief Whip, the third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Zet Majosi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the Census 2022 report recorded that the overall population in South Africa increased by around 10 million, with a total of 62 million people living in the country as of 2022. According to Stats SA data, more than 2.4 million immigrants call South Africa home, which equates to around 3% of the total population. Considering that the survey did not distinguish between legal and illegal statuses, I would like to know how immigration policies will address the influx of illegal migrants across our country's porous borders. Thank you.
I thank you, honorable member. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. A number of initiatives are underway, both executive as well as legislative, to address the issue of illegal migrants into our country. We have spent a considerable amount of time at government level, at cabinet level, discussing this matter, and will be coming forward with a type of legislative instruments that will help to address this matter. But at the executive level, we have implemented the Border Management Agency, which has already started to address this issue of illegal migration in our country. In time, the BMA will report to Parliament and will be able to outline the successes that they have already started as a very young entity, recently inaugurated. One gets very pleased to see the type of agility, the type of effectiveness that they already are demonstrating. Yes, you could say we should have set the BMA up long ago, but we have set it up now, and it is already doing its work. And its most effective work is going to be addressing the issue of illegal migrants into our country. And our country has always been welcoming to people who are from outside the borders of South Africa. And we have often said that we would like this, yes, to be a home, because South Africa in the end belongs to all who live in it, but they must be legally here. And that's precisely what we are going to be focusing attention on going forward, from a legislative as well as from regulatory and executive point of view. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable F.J. Mulder.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable President. A census is not in reality a full and accurate count of the number of people in a country. Rather, it is itself an estimate of the size of the population at a point in time. What is perhaps most striking about the Census 2022 is a very high undercount of 31% of people and 30% of households were missed, or those not to be self-numerated either online or via zero-rated telephonic methods. This is the highest undercount since 1994 and a new international record. What measures will the South African government implement between the post-enumeration survey and the 2032 census to eradicate the extremely high undercount experienced in 2022? Thank you, Honourable President.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, yes, Statistics South Africa did say that, as often happens in every census, there is often the margin of error or non-counting, and in the interim, they are going to be addressing this. They have a particular term they use, which escapes my thinking at the moment, but they are going to be doing a corrective process, embarking on a corrective process, which is done all over the world. And that corrective process will be able to deal with the anomalies or the weaknesses that you have alluded to. It may well be possibly the higher one in the world, but it is not anomalous. It happens all over the world. And the good thing is that South Africa is addressing this matter, and it was given rise to by a number of factors. For instance, the Western Cape was the one province that contributed greatly to this, and there are reasons why the enumerators were not able to get to count as many households and as many people as they needed to, and that too is going to be addressed, and it is being addressed as we speak. Going forward, and of course, before I even get to that, there were all these other challenges, the challenges that Honorable Janji also referred to, that many other countries faced, that in a way prevented them from even doing their own census. We proceeded nonetheless to produce a product which, even with its own weaknesses, is a credible product. And as I've said, Stats SA is the only credible organization that can give us, yes, the estimates of our population, because in the end, census does precisely that. Going forward to 2032, yes, government will be taking steps to make sure that the census process moves flawlessly forward. One of those is to allocate enough resources in time for Stats SA. That is one thing that we will focus our attention on, and a whole number of other areas as well, including public education as well, and including telling our people about the need for accessibility so that, yes, they can be counted as well. And also embarking on a massive campaign that will enable people to feel much more comfortable and be willing to be counted. So there are a number of initiatives that we will embark upon. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. Question number 23, honorable members, has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, the Minister of Finance yesterday tabled the medium-term budget policy statement, which outlined our country's fiscal position and provided information on government spending priorities over the next 3 years. Amongst other things, the minister indicated in the MTBPS that we are resolved to stabilize public finances while maintaining support for the most vulnerable and protecting frontline services. At the same time, we are fast-tracking growth-enhancing reforms, which include a new financing mechanism for large, what I call big-ticket infrastructure projects. Work is underway to reconfigure the structure and size of the state while strengthening its capacity to deliver quality basic services. The cost containment guidelines issued by the National Treasury give advice and guidance to government departments to ensure a sound and prudent management of public finances in the context of significant constraints. The increase in fiscal constraint is mainly due to reduced revenues. The cost containment guidelines target non-critical spending items such as travel, catering, accommodation, and capital items that have not yet commenced. And this is also based on addressing the issue of underspending. Because as the minister said, there has also been underspending which is given rise to by departments not having the capacity, not fulfilling the required time frame to be able to spend what has been allocated to them. So if you take that into account as well, you will see that, yes, the reductions have been aligned to that other issue of the underspending experience that we have had. The discussions that I and the Deputy President have with the ministers on an ongoing basis are focused on how the programs, as well as the activities undertaken by various government departments, advance economic growth. They also advance social development and service delivery, and focus on the priorities that have been set to be achieved. Ministers and their departments engage with National Treasury on how best to implement any budget restructuring and how to delay projects where necessary without compromising the needs of communities. As indicated in the MTBPS yesterday, we are on course to prudently manage government expenditure while we retain our focus on infrastructure, health, education, policing as critical areas of growth and development. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, yesterday your Finance Minister again tabled a budget based on misplaced priorities. And just one example of these crooked priorities, your government and your Finance Minister took 57 million rand from the Department of Basic Education, set aside for eradicating pit toilets at schools, in order to fund, wait for it, even higher salaries for deployed cadres. This is despite the fact This is despite the fact that over 55,000 of your bureaucrats now earn over 1 million rand a year. These cuts to the infrastructure budget of basic education undermine what you've just told this House, and also are a slap in the face for the family of Langalam Vicky, who died tragically in March this year in a pit toilet in the Eastern Cape. Like it has done so many times before, your government has chosen cadres over the citizens. You've chosen to pay higher salaries by slashing frontline services and the fight against eradicating pit toilets, and you're pushing us towards a debt crisis where South Africa's debt will be over 6 trillion rand by 2025-26. Mr. President, I ask a simple question. To fund this debt and to fund these cuts, and it's a simple yes or no question, will you raise taxes in the February budget next year for South Africans? Yes or no?
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable, the President. The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And the answer is a very simple one. I would like the Leader of the Opposition to be present next year in February in the House when the Minister of Finance presents his budget. Then he will hear whether that will happen or not. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable President. I thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N.S. Buthelezi.
Sibonge Mongameli. Honorable President, due to the under-collection, the budget deficit has increased by 54.7 billion rand compared to February budget. And that's because of many factors, and many of them we know that are exogenous factors. The ANC welcomes the agility of government in stabilizing public finances. We also agree that the answer is sustainable economic growth. Honorable President, what are the interventions that you'll be making to ensure that as we deliver on the infrastructure, what you call the big tickets projects, that those things are implemented within budget, without any form of collusion or corruption, within budgeted time? Please, Mr. President, can you please take us into confidence? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Thank you, Honorable Buthelezi. Yes, indeed. One of the things that we are seeking to focus on, which we've been focusing on for a considerable amount of time, is to put in place effective funding mechanisms for infrastructure projects. Yes, what you've correctly said, I said, big ticket infrastructure projects. We want those projects to move ahead. And a good example is how we are now finding ways, for instance, to get on with big projects like the Umzimvubu Dam, which is initially a 17 billion rand project. And when we get to the second phase, it will add more billions of rands and to completion as well. So that requires innovative funding mechanisms. Yesterday, the minister said that we are going to be embarking on a new funding mechanisms for these projects. And this is given rise to by the challenges that we face at a fiscal level, but also the desires that we have to inject growth in our country, in our economy, by also embarking on these big infrastructure projects. And we are therefore going to be introducing mechanisms to fund these projects. For instance, front loading, as we call it. Funding, for instance, the funding of schools, construction of schools, the funding of housing, front loading that, finding innovative ways of funding that. Because if we don't do that, we are going to wait for the longest time. For instance, one person estimated that just to put the schools, for instance, in a province like Limpopo, on a much more effective or competitive level to improve the infrastructure in our schools will take us 75 years. And we now need to achieve our dreams a lot earlier and find innovative ways of funding that infrastructure process. Now, as Minister said, we've embarked on such a front-loading process with Northern Cape, and the other provinces are going to follow in tow, where we are now going to speed up the process of ensuring that there's proper infrastructure that is going to support the lives of our people. And other measures are going to be build, operate, and transfer, where we'll be able to engage partners who will be able to invest money and will be able to not only build, but maintain those infrastructure, big ticket installations or facilities, and then in the end, operate them and transfer. And at all material times, we will be having a developmental approach to make sure that all this is done in an affordable way. And yes, there will be another speeding up of processes such as the PPPs, the private-public partnership process, which had stalled, which we are now going to ensure that it gets off the ground once again, so that we utilize it as a very good funding mechanisms. So to answer your question directly, we are going to effectively execute infrastructure programs or projects on a large scale. And we are already involved in, for instance, the second phase of the Lesotho Highlands project, which is also a mega infrastructure project. We are also implementing water projects at in a number of areas in our country. And in the end, we want to have dams and real effective and working waterworks.
Honorable members, Honorable President, our apologies for that interruption. May we ask that the microphone of that member is disabled, please. Please continue, Honorable President.
So, in dealing with corruption, we have also established the Infrastructure Build Anti-Corruption Forum, which is a multi-stakeholder collaboration against fraud, corruption, and maladministration in the construction sector. And from a criminal justice point of view, we are also going to be focusing on the construction mafia. We've now set up a real effective team at the police level, which is also going to be well supported by the various other agencies in our criminal justice system, to ensure that we are able to implement these construction or infrastructure projects without interference and without disruption by the construction mafia, because we're now going to go after them. Those who want to disrupt our infrastructure projects, we will deal with them toe to toe. So infrastructure now is going to be one of the key areas of focus. We've had to address the lack of capacity. We've had to address the lack of greater clarity on funding mechanisms, We've now reached a level where we are now unleashing all that, and we're now going to see a lot of infrastructure projects strewn right across our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President. The next supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Honorable President, cost containment measures will not be necessary if the money in the fiscus is doubled. The country is looking for 15 billion rand next year. Honorable President, how about suggesting to the Minister of Finance to tax, especially big business, on sales and services instead of only on profits, because profits is diluted by what I call illicit tax avoidance. I'm not speaking about tax evasion, which is a criminal activity. Honorable President, I would like to also welcome the guests of the Honorable Imam Sheikh. Honorable President, you are open to suggestions of the leader of the opposition.
Honorable Member, your time has expired.
Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Yes, thank you, Honorable House Chair. There are a number of ways in which we can enhance our tax collection processes. I should say that we have a very effective tax collector in our country, which is the South African Revenue Services, which has proven to be hugely effective, because over time they've been able to succeed in ensuring that taxes are paid in the most proper manner in terms of our laws. And we have taken trouble to ensure that we will continue funding them, because what they bring in terms of tax revenue far outweighs the costs that we put in place to enable them to do their work. Yes, whilst our corporate taxes have come down, we should applaud the fact that our personal income tax processes have shown a great deal of improvement. That demonstrates two things: that South Africans, through exercising their patriotism, are becoming more and more a tax-paying community. And the second part is just the effectiveness of our tax collection agency in the form of SARS. So that should please us. And as the economy recovers, as our companies become more and more profitable, we will be able to increase our tax collection also from companies. And with the laws that we now have in place, tax avoidance is a matter that those who seek to avoid tax or evade tax do so at their own peril, because our tax collection agency is very much alive and awake, and they are able to follow the money. So I see, as our economy improves and we also address some of the challenges that we have, particularly in the logistics area as well as the energy area, the taxes that are paid by our companies will start ticking up, increasing, as to be able to increase the collections of our taxes so that we can fund the various programs that we have, and also on an ongoing basis improve the economic performance of our country. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable President, the ACDP shares your commendations of the work that SARS has done over the years and the improvement in tax collection. One of the issues, however, that SARS does raise is the issue of underfunding. And the issue that I would like to raise with you, President, is surely if one is able to capacitate SARS more, they will be able to collect more taxes and be more efficient. And we know that they were hollowed out during the state capture years and are improving on their performance, and we commend them in that regard. However, we understand that there is a tax gap of a few 100 billion rand, maybe in the area of about 300 billion rand. That is monies that are on SARS debt book, that are due to SARS and have not been collected yet for a variety of reasons. If 10% of that is collected, that would be an extra 30 billion rand. President, would you agree that SARS should be fully resourced in order for them to collect fully, and that would help us balance the books? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The Honorable President.
Well, House Chair, yes, I agree. And that is as simply and as directly as I can put it. A well-resourced SARS would be a very effective investment that we as a country make in increasing our revenues that will stand us in good stead when it comes to funding the necessities or the needs of our people in the form of the programs that we embark upon and the investments that we need to put in place. So I could not agree more. And we will be focusing on that even as we go to next year's budget to make sure that SARS is not shortchanged. It is when SARS is properly funded, as you correctly say, Honorable Swart, that we will be able to see greater collections. And that's what we will focus on. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, the last question has been asked by the Honorable Holomisa. I now recognize the Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I would like to start off by saying that yes, the question that the Honorable Holomisa has raised is an important and key one, and addressing the capability of the SANDF in the way where it needs to respond to the challenges that we face. As the Minister of Finance indicated in the MTPPS yesterday, the severely constrained fiscal environment is putting pressure on every component of the state, on all its programs. We have therefore embarked on a path to consolidate our spending, to pursue growth through reforms and reconfigure the size and the structure of the state, while protecting, as I have said, the delivery of basic services to our people. The work of the South African National Defence Force is critical to the security of our country and the safety and well-being of its people. The constrained fiscal environment has required that SANDF prioritize its activities to optimize the effectiveness and efficiency of all aspects of defense organization. Based on an extensive analysis, the SANDF has developed a plan that is known within the Department of Defense as the Journey to Greatness. And this is based on how, over the years, the funding of our SANDF has been going down, and we have sought to arrest that and to begin a process of uplifting the capacitation and the funding of the Defense Force. In terms of this plan, the disaster management capability, as you asked, of the SANDF will form part of the greater rapid deployment capability. This capability consists of land, air, maritime, and military health forces with dedicated specialists and supporting elements capable of being deployed for a wide range of missions at short notice. Despite the constraints, the SANDF continues to demonstrate that it is ready, willing, and able to respond to both national, internal, regional, and international threats. The SANDF has participated in various peacekeeping missions under the auspices of the United Nations, the African Union, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC. The SANDF played a critical role in responding to the catastrophic floods that struck KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape in 2022, as well as parts of Northwest. Through Operation Chariot, which is a standing contingency operation for support to other government departments for disaster management and humanitarian relief, the SANDF undertook search and rescue operations. It also transported relief material and equipment and assisted with the repair and rehabilitation of roads and bridges. We should expect that the country will continue to experience extreme weather conditions due to climate change, and that the SANDF will be called upon to assist in responding to any disasters that may arise. We can all agree that we would want the SANDF, as well as all critical components of the state, to have more resources and more capability. The Defense Force has nevertheless shown itself to be capable of responding effectively when called upon to do so, and they will continue to respond effectively whenever called upon to do so, as they always respond to the call of duty. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable B.H. Holomisa.
House Chair, he has connectivity problems. Can I take over the question?
Sure, it's connectivity problems because, can I just intervene here? The Honourable Member is on the platform, and I'm told that the feedback that we were hearing was because of the fact that his microphone is intermittently on and off. So I'll first establish if he can take the question, and if not, you can step in for him. The Honourable Holomisa can now unmute his microphone and put his question.
Chairperson and Honorable President, thank you for the elaborated answer. Understanding that in 1998, a decision was taken to focus more on social security. However, circumstances on home soil have drastically changed, especially in the last 5 years. Given that there are increased threats to domestic peace and security, there is a greater need for an adaptable SANDF to act in support, rather, of the SA police services. Yet the SANDF's equipment is obsolete and suitable training is lacking. Do you agree that the time is ripe to take another look at the SANDF's mandate in relation to local peacekeeping and ensuring the safety of our citizens? I'm based this question on what happened in 2021 mayhem in KwaZulu and Gauteng. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, and thank you, General Retired Olomisa.
Thank you.
Your observations are apt. They are born out of the experience that we have had in the recent past with regard to how the SANDF has been utilized for domestic security as well as disaster management tasks, which tasks they have taken on with a great deal of commitment. And when they have been called upon to support the one entity whose main task is the security of South Africans and the safety of South Africans inside the country, they have been willingly able to do so. It was not only during the 2021 July unrest, it was also during COVID, when we enlisted the SANDF to support the South African Police Service. Recently, I wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly as well as the Chair of the Council of Provinces, informing them that I am extending the deployment of almost 900 soldiers to work in assistance of the police where it comes to safeguarding infrastructure in our country, public infrastructure, and now also in doing and performing other tasks, such as having to deal with the brazen acts of criminals in the construction as well as in illegal mining. So we already see that the support that they lend to the police is quite invaluable and is appreciated not only by the police but by the citizens of our country. Whenever there are safety and security challenges, they have always asked for soldiers to support the police. So your question is apt, but clearly it is a constitutional matter that needs to be looked at very, very carefully. But as we improve the capability and the resourcing of the SANDF, and as they embark on their journey to greatness, these are matters that we will continue looking at. I'm very proud of how our South African National Defence Force members and the command thereof have really taken on the tasks that they have always been given, both inside and outside of our country. It is a national defense force that we can truly be proud of. And we are also proud of the leadership that it has. You, Honorable Holomisa, being a former not only soldier but a commander and a general, I'm sure you will appreciate that our National Defense Force is really up to the tasks at the best and the worst of times. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Ms. M. Mudise.
Thank you, House Chair. Mr. President, as we note the insufficient funding and budget constraints in the SNDF, we also appreciate the role of the Defense Force in providing humanitarian support during disasters, as we saw in the KZN, Eastern Cape, and Northwest, and it has highly displayed the SNDF's capability. Can the President outline the proactive measures and initiatives that the government has undertaken to reinforce the SNDF's operational capabilities for its disaster management support, considering the increasing exigencies brought about by the climate change? I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Yes, we can speak very proudly of how the SANDF has really distinguished itself, particularly when it has embarked on operations inside our country, but not only inside our country, but also in assistance of our neighbors. Some of our neighbors, whenever there are climate change disasters, always rely on our air capability to assist them, and also on our engineering capabilities to assist them rebuild some of their own infrastructure. So we have a National Defense Force that is really, really capable. And as you correctly say, the underfunding that has been going on with regard to the SANDF is a matter that we are addressing. And I have also said that we need to increase the funding for the SANDF so that they are always ready and always capable to be able to take on not only tasks of defending the integrity of the Republic, but also its people, and also ensuring that when there are disasters, they are the best capable of addressing disasters or helping our people navigate their way through disastrous climate change effects. And the humanitarian aspect in the manner how they execute their tasks is something that really stands out, because they do that with care, they do that with great compassion, and they do that with great capability. One has seen them in action, both here and in other countries who are our neighbors, and one always marvels at the way in which our soldiers, our naval officers, and our pilots and air crews are able to execute the tasks that they are given. So we have, as I said earlier, a South African National Defense Force that we can truly be proud of. Well-trained, well-prepared at all times. And the other thing we should really truly be proud of is that more and more our National Defense Force is becoming more and more diverse, a true representative entity of what our country stands for in terms of its diversity. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's duplicitous to say that you're fighting for more funding for the SANDF when your empty BPS table yesterday speaks exactly the opposite. The reality is that our South African Air Force and our SANDF are on their deathbed. And frankly, your words of praise ring hollow when you will not support, equip, train, and ensure that our men and women in uniform have the best possible equipment that they need. In a response to your defense minister's, to a question put to your defense minister last week, revealed that 85% of South Africa's aircraft fleet is currently out of action. That's because they are non-serviceable, they are old, or there are no spare parts to fix them. Sounds a bit like the ANC. This is yet another ANC-made crisis, and another example of something that you have broken, just like Transnet, just like Eskom, just like PRASA, and the list goes on. They could hardly come to the rescue of our own citizens in times of trouble in KwaZulu-Natal. Mr. President, a simple question again. Can you, as Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, say with a clear conscience to all of us as South Africans that we could protect South Africa if we were attacked from within or without? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, the answer is simply yes. We have a very capable South African National Defence Force. Much as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition tries to undermine, to degrade them, you only need to speak not only to South Africans, but also to those beyond our borders, who will tell you how our men and women in uniform, when deployed on missions outside of the borders of our country, demonstrate not only bravery, but capability to execute the tasks that they're deployed in by the United Nations, by the African Union, by the South African Development Community, SADC. And if you did not want to listen to any of the things that I have said, you only need to speak to those three organizations, and they will tell you how the South African National Defence Force is fully capable of coming to the defense of the citizens of South Africa because of the prowess, the capability that they have always displayed whenever they are deployed. I have seen it in action when we have called upon them, and when I have deployed them, they have always lived up to their true capability. Even as, yes, they face many constraints, and these are constraints that we are addressing. Now, with the challenges that we are facing now, the dip that we are going to go through in terms of their budget is momentary. We have embarked on a journey which they call return to greatness, a journey to greatness. And that journey is correctly going to involve the capacitation of our South African National Defence Force. I was amongst the first to receive their ambitions, and I've agreed with them that yes, would like them as a defense force to return to greatness. That is going to require funding, and funding that we will make available. Currently, what we are going through is a momentary dip. The ambition is great, the ambition is correct to ensure that our National Defence Force becomes even more capable than we can imagine. Thank you, Honourable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. Honourable members, the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Mr. President, I think we must agree, if you listen to the statement by our Minister of Defence, and I must admit that if there's anybody capable of turning the South African national defence, then indeed it is our Minister, Thandi Modise. Right. Now, she also says that what is happening in SANDF is not sustainable. There's no doubt about it. If you wanted to turn it around, we have to give her the tools of trade. I think the question is how soon can we provide the tools of trade? Given the fact, Mr. President, that on moral high ground, this country has taken decisions that has made us unpopular with the threat by the West and Israel. To such an extent, South Africans are training in the Israeli Defense Force, which poses a serious risk. How do you intend to deal with both these challenges that we are facing, given the challenges we have at the Defense Force? And yes, I know you did say, Mr. President, that funding will be made available, but time is of essence. I plead with you to tell us how soon can we expect some funding to go to the Defense Force to be able to make them successful and defend.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Indeed, time is of the essence when it comes to fully capacitating our National Defense Force. And it is a commitment that we are making that we will capacitate the Defense Force. The good thing and the pleasing thing is that the Defense Force, led by Minister Modise, has come up with a clear plan of a journey to greatness. They want to be a great Defense Force, and we already have a very good foundation. It's not like we're starting from scratch. And as we move on further forward, and as our fiscal position improves, the Defense Force is going to be one of those government entities that we are going to focus more attention on. Yes, when I realized that over the number of years that their budget has continuously been coming down, I did say we need to turn this around. And last year, we were able to allocate a little bit more money to them, but now we're facing challenges that have required that we reprioritize. And they are one of those government departments that have come forward and said we can prioritize this and that. But going forward, as I said, we are going to ensure that, yes, they are well funded, well capacitated, and Honorable Sheikh, we will make sure that that soon becomes sooner, and that they are given the tools that will make them a bit more capable than they are. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. Honourable members, that concludes questions to the President. I wish to thank His Excellency the President. I request members to stand and wait for the chairperson and the mace to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.